Thank you very much for the introduction, it's a real pleasure to be here with you on Book Talk. A little bit of my background. I became a journalist in 1977 when I went to Mexico to work for an English language newspaper called the Mexico City News. I went there supposedly for a 10-week internship so I could do internship and finish up the coursework for a master's degree at Ohio University in Athens, Ohio. I stayed at the newspaper for a year, and I started to work for United Press International. I don't know if there are any journalists in the audience or people who work for one of the wire services. At the time, UPI was a big, powerful rival of the Associated Press. It's not it's not the same kind of organization today than it was then, but back then it was an important contributor to news and information from around the world. So I stayed in Mexico for 4 years. After that, went to work at UPI's foreign desk in New York for a couple of years. And then during my time in Mexico, I was fortunate enough to have covered the Sandinista Revolution in 1979. And this was the beginning of a story that continues to this day. This book that I wrote, actually, Wait for Me, True Stories of War, Love, and Rock and Roll. Much of it is based on my experiences covering not just the war in Nicaragua in 1979, but the Contra War, which I covered because after UPI in New York, my working there for 2 years, I went to Nicaragua in 1983 and stayed until 1990. I became Newsweek magazine's contract photographer for all of Latin America and the Caribbean, which means my territory covered from the Rio Grande River all the way down to the tip of South America and the entire hemisphere into the Caribbean, including Haiti, Cuba, and all the rest of the islands in that region. But the fact is, I spent most of my time in Nicaragua and El Salvador because that's where the eye of the storm was. It was rolling across Latin America, the whole time. So, and this is not a bang bang book. It's not just a story about my coverage of wars and the daring do of a Newsweek magazine photographer. It's an amalgam, really, of those conflicts in Central America blended in with my personal life, my Italian American immigrant family. My mother and father were both born in Italy. They came to this country in the 1930s, before the Second World War. My grandfather, all of my uncles, my father, my brothers, and I all worked in the steel mills in southwestern Pennsylvania. That's where my background is. And I try to blend this background into my coverage of the conflicts in Central America and beyond, and to figure out my relationship with war, with journalism, with love, with family, with self. And the book has gotten some pretty good reviews, actually, and I'm really, really happy about that. And I'll let you decide for yourself if you decide to read it. But I marked a couple of parts here that I'd like to read for you that give you a sense of what the book is about. And I'm just going to read, these are short excerpts from the book. And if you have questions, feel free to stop me while we're talking. In this, I'm going to read a page or two from the prologue of the book, which gives you a sense of the level of violence of the Contra War, which took place, of course, during the 1980s and was funded by the Iran-Contra affair for a while. Those were illegal funds. The Reagan administration managed to get legal funds to fund the conflict as well. This is what the prologue sounds like. A colleague and I are bombing down a dirt road in the mountains of northern Nicaragua when a couple of Sandinista army vehicles are coming at us from the opposite direction. These are the Jeep-style vehicles used by Sandinista field commanders in the war against CIA-backed Contra rebels. And it turns out that the driver in the lead vehicle is Lieutenant Francisco Noel Talavera, and we both slam on the brakes to say hello. Talavera is a 19-year-old from the northern mountain city of Jinotega. He has a bad complexion and the habit of spitting through the gap in his upper two front teeth. He also happens to be the commander of 3 of the 7 companies in the elite Simón Bolívar battalion of the Sandinista People's Army. Talavera has an extraordinary sense of himself, of the importance of his role, and of his ability to execute that role. There's a cordiality between us from the start. By this time covering the conflict, I had been on so many missions with the soldiers and had gotten to know the battalion commanders so well that they would just take me into the field with them whenever I showed up. I'm a photojournalist covering the war anytime I want to, as opposed to doing what the rest of the MOOCs in the Foreign Press Corps are required to do before heading north to the mountains. They have to go through the Sandinista Defense Ministry with a written request that could take weeks or forever to get through the bureaucracy before getting a written permit to go north where the war is being waged. On this morning, Talavera asks if I would like to accompany him and his troops on a mission. So my colleague and I look at each other and go something like, fucking A. It is at the end of a long hike when Talavera's scouts spot the Contras on a nearby hillside. He waits for his enemies to settle around their campfires on top of the hill, allowing his own men a more visible and a more compact target. Talavera pulls his soldiers, all of them crawling on their stomachs, up to the clearing on our hill, to positions that enable them a clear shot at the enemy. The peasants, whose home is situated at the edge of the clearing where Talavera's men take positions, crouch down behind their rough-hewn board hut. Scratched into the slats of wood are etchings made by the hand of a child. They look like cave drawings left by Neanderthals in dark European caverns. But these don't show woolly mammoths or sleek gazelles. They show gigantic birds, monsters really, breathing fire. Their huge eyes are made of glass. They have strange circular wings mounted on their backs. Stick figures of people lie dead on the ground. Helicopters, dead Sandinistas, dead Contras, dead peasants. You know, I was raised in a small steel town just northwest of Pittsburgh in southwestern Pennsylvania. This was during the 1960s, 70s, when the Vietnam War was still on. I've never been to Vietnam, and I haven't covered Vietnam, but I grew up on pictures in Life magazine of Vietnam, and you know, some of the work of the most extraordinary photographers of the time. That's what planted the seed in me, you know, the seed of wonder about conflict, about journalism, about photography, about visual communication. It was those experiences of looking at those pictures in Time magazine. The conflict in Nicaragua was very, very similar to the conflict in Vietnam. As a matter of fact, a couple of my colleagues, one of them who worked for the Miami Herald and the other one who worked for the Associated Press, were both Vietnam veterans. The Miami Herald, the Miami Herald correspondent was a swift boat operator commander in Vietnam, and my Associated Press colleague was an Associated Press photographer who was a LRP in Vietnam. It's long range reconnaissance patrol. Is one of the most. These are two of the most dangerous jobs during the Vietnam War, being a swift boat commander and being a LRP. And they told me, and I learned a lot from these men about covering the kind of guerrilla warfare that was the Contra War. And by no means do I want to compare the level of firepower or violence in Vietnam to Nicaragua or even El Salvador, but those conflicts were deadly nonetheless. 30,000 people were killed during the Contra War in Nicaragua. Roughly an equal number were killed during the 1979 revolution. In El Salvador, about 75,000 people were killed in the 10-year-long war, roughly the same amount of time as the Vietnam War. So a lot of people have asked me, when I do visits like these, why now? Why do the book now? What made you write this thing? What do you expect to get out of it? What do you want your audience to see or read? And in the introduction to the book, I try to explain that, and as opposed to paraphrasing it, I'll just read just like one page of this introduction to give you a sense of why now. The stories of our lives describe what is meaningful to us. They help us define who we are. The stories I pass on in this book form the account of one man's embrace of and struggle with war, love, family, a profession, and self. I've carried these stories with me for decades. And for decades, they have yearned to be released, to be shared, to be told. I tell these stories now because I believe they contain something of value to researchers seeking information about the historic events that swept over Central America in the late 1970s, 80s, and early 90s. Value to young men and women who aspire to use the craft of journalism, especially photojournalism, video journalism, and other forms of visual communication, to engage and to document their own times and experiences. Value to all who might learn something of the human condition seen through the prism of one man who lived through those times and whose experiences and who is willing to write about them. These are more than just stories about war. They are a collective statement about journalism and the men and women who practice it, about the decisions we make, about what we aspire to achieve, about the people and the stories that we tell. Perhaps more importantly, this book introduces the American people, that's all of us, who sponsor those faraway conflicts, to the victims of US military intervention abroad. We intervene in foreign countries supposedly for, quote, freedom and democracy, close quote. But few Americans see the faces of collateral damage or know the names of the dead and wounded in those battles. Wait for Me is a first-hand, frontline account of the human cost of war. I get very personal in this book, and I had the extraordinary good fortune of meeting a young woman whose name is Claudia, Nicaraguan woman, whose family was very, very engaged in the conflict in Nicaragua. I learned about Nicaragua and its society through my relationship of these people. Nicaraguans are very, very generous with their time. They were very generous to me. I learned a lot. They protected me. They allowed me to work in their country. They told their stories to me so that I would be able to tell them to you. They allowed me to make hundreds of thousands of pictures so that I would share them with people like you. The conflict is not just about my work in Nicaragua. The conflict is about the people who prepared me, who helped me through their example to do the things that I had to do, some of them very, very dangerous in Nicaragua. Two of my journalism colleagues were killed within 20 feet of me, both of them in El Salvador. And I had the great misfortune of having to help carry them off the field of battle onto to hospitals or to safety. And neither of them lived. They both died of their wounds. People also ask me why this title. What's the title about? Wait for Me: True Stories of War, Love, and Rock and Roll. And I'll tell you, during the very, very final stages of me writing this manuscript and putting all of this information together, and by all of this information, I mean the thousands of reporters' notebooks, these guys here, that I have, in footlockers in my attic in this home where I am in Washington, D.C., that I've recorded the last, 40 years of my life, because I always carry these things around, and it's a journal for me. It's a note reminder for me. And I have the benefit of looking back on these things, going through them, which I did when I wrote this book, going back through all of this material and drawing from this material, and not just this, but from the letters that I wrote back and forth to my family, to the letters that I received from my family, the captions that I wrote for the thousands of pictures that I made for Newsweek magazine and for United Press International. I had all of this visual and print material to draw from and include it in this book. At the very end of the manuscript, I ran across a poem by a Russian poet that was written during the Second World War. And the poem is called Wait for Me. And it's about a young reporter who goes off to the front of the fighting in the Second World War and asks the people behind to wait for his return, despite the fact that the war at the front fighting the Nazis was a very, very perilous affair. So I'll read this thing for you. It's pretty short and sweet, and you'll get a sense of why I took the title from this and how it reflects part of my own experience, leaving this country and going to a country that was to a region at war. The author is Konstantin Simonov. Wait for me to return. Only the wait will be hard. Wait when the grief invades you while you watch the rain fall. Wait when the winds sweep the snow. Wait in the suffocating heat when others have stopped waiting, forgetting their yesterday. Wait even when letters do not reach you from far away. Wait even when others have tired of waiting. Wait even when my mother and son believe that I no longer exist, and when friends sit by the fire to toast my memory. Wait. Do not rush to offer for my memory you too. Wait, because I will defy all deaths, and let those who do not wait say I was lucky. They will never understand that in the midst of death, you, with your weight, you saved me. Only you and I know how I survived. It's because you waited and the others did not. So, I read this poem, even today, after, months of reading it and dealing with it, it still moves me. I still find it very, very powerful. And the people who waited for me are the folks, are my parents, my brothers, my relatives back in the steel mills and in the Italian American community in southwestern Pennsylvania. Those are the folks who waited for me, and those are the folks who prepared me, unknowingly, to cover conflict and to risk my life making pictures for Newsweek magazine and writing stories for United Press International. The steel mills were so much a part of my upbringing, and I try to weave my experiences in the steel mills into the storytelling. When I was just about finished with this piece, with this book, I hired what's called a developmental editor. And a developmental editor's job is to read the manuscript and not look for errors in spelling or grammar or anything like that. The job of a developmental editor is to look for the construction, how the book is built, and figure out if it's logical, if this information should be included further back into the book, or the information should be pulled to the front of the book. And so I hired this gentleman and paid him a nice sum. And he said at the end of the piece, he said, "Forget about this stuff in Western Pennsylvania and your family and all that. No one's interested in this stuff." And this completely ran counter to what I was trying to do with the book. So, and I didn't take his advice. I made the book about my background mixed with my experiences in Central America and beyond. And the steel mills were in my Italian family are very much a part of that component of this book. And it's strange, perhaps not so strange, but the people who have read the book, most of them get back, and what's resonated with them are precisely the stories about my life back in southwestern Pennsylvania and my family background. That seems to be what touches them the most. And I guess it's because most people have relatives, they have family relations. Very few people who read this book actually have been to war and seen combat. So my experience in the steel mills are more important to them than the stories about war. Here's a small piece that gives you a sense of what working in the steel mills was like. I worked my way through college in these mills, and I learned very quickly that the mills assault one's senses, wipes them out. I remember hearing the workplace long before even seeing it. Coming through the tunnel that feeds workers into this Dantesque world, a deep rumble is punctuated by train whistles, the crashing of railroad cars linking together, and the horns of riverboats crying sadder than loons on the nearby river. I get through the tunnel and see it all laying along the horizon. Huge black rectangular steel buildings connected by wires with smokestacks taller than the buildings jut into the sky, eating up men and machines, spitting out smoke, fire, and steel. I step into a black and white world where everything is oversized, exaggerated, and lethal. In the summertime, the heat from the furnace and the metal that rolls out of its mouth comes at me like a wave of an explosion. In the wintertime, steel coming out of the furnace warms the air half a football field away. At nighttime, the white hot steel turns the half-lit building into daytime. I understood that this was the fire my father pointed out to us when, as kids, we drove past the place in our 1956 Plymouth. It's a menacing place. Just about everything can kill or maim. So I kept my eyes open and my limbs under control. I watched every move because I can lean against the wrong thing and get electrocuted. I can take a wrong step and fall to my death. I can put my hand in the wrong place and a machine will bite it off. I can look too close or in the wrong place and sparks will burn my eyes out. One of the other workers can bump against a stack of steel beams that will topple and crush my legs like a heavy boot on paper cups. Especially during the 12 midnight to 8 a.m. shift, I would take the opportunity to doze off on some of the wooden benches provided for workers during downtime. I was especially careful to keep my hands from hanging down to the ground out of concern that the rats populating the place would take a bite. Big rats. And I hate rats. That's the kind of a place that I worked in to get through a couple of years of college at Penn State University in the mountains of central Pennsylvania. All of this happened in Central America. And for most of you, you look like you're old enough to remember those times. This was during, when I was working in Central America, it was during the Reagan administration. And it was a tough time for Central Americans. Unfortunately, Central Americans and their countries had the extraordinary misfortune of having been caught in the last stages of the Cold War. I'm going to read you one more excerpt from this book, and then I'll turn it over to Michael and the other guest. And it's about what the Reagan administration was like. It was about the context of what was happening in Nicaragua and how they were trapped between these two superpowers. So this is the subchapter called The Reagan Administration. It's important to remember the context of my time in Nicaragua. The Reagan administration's policy against the Sandinista government had really begun to impact the entire country, and all the positive things the Sandinistas wanted to do were put on hold just to defend itself. Nicaragua was on a war footing. The government forced to shovel 60% of its gross national product into defense. And with the help of the Soviet Union, Cuba, East Germany, and other Soviet bloc states, the Sandinistas trained, armed, and shipped off their youth to the mountains to fight the Contras who were being recruited, trained, and armed by the United States. The war, the devastating US trade embargo, the draft, the killing, the fleeing of the youth, the exodus of the middle class, the capital flight, brain drain, the abandonment of farmland by peasants who sought safety in the cities, the subsequent disruption of the labor force and the nation's agricultural production, all of this was happening at the same time. To the north, American forces arrived in Honduras for, quote, exercises that bore an uncanny resemblance to US preparations for invasion. Many of these forces, rotated through the country, managed to leave behind tons of war material, stuff that mysteriously but inevitably found its way to Contra forces fighting the Sandinistas. US military advisors arm, train, and advise the Contras staging raids into Nicaragua. CIA advisors teach the Contras how to, quote, neutralize Sandinista activists. In this context, neutralize means kill. To the south, Costa Rica holds former Sandinista war hero Eden Pastora. Pastora didn't like the way the Sandinistas were going, so he launched his own war against the Sandinistas. He was also getting sporadic aid and advice from the United States. In El Salvador, the US-backed government is busy fighting a civil war that in 10 years will claim 75,000 lives, most of them innocent civilians killed by government forces and right-wing death squads. In Guatemala, the regime is busy carrying out a scorched earth policy against the indigenous population that supports or is suspected of supporting anti-government guerrillas. And scorched earth in Guatemala means just that. It means soldiers surround a village, then go in and kill everybody and everything, men, women, children, dogs, cats, chickens, cows, monkeys, parrots. Soldiers bury the victims in mass graves or throw them into wells. Then they burn down the village. And that's how the earth gets scorched. To the great misfortune of her people, Central America had become one of the final battlegrounds of the Cold War. I believe it was Salvadoran Archbishop Oscar Arnulfo Romero who once most fittingly described Central America's dilemma, caught in the middle of a struggle between two superpowers. Open quote, they provide the weapons and we provide the dead, close quote. So, that's all I have for you right now. I'm happy to answer any of your questions or receive any of your comments. By the way, I just want to add before I finish up, none of the aggression against Nicaragua during the 1980s, none of it excuses the current rulers of Nicaragua for what's happening there today. What's happening there today is incredibly sad, especially when you consider how many people died in the process of trying to make life better for the country and her people during these two conflicts, the Contra War and the revolution in 1979. None of it excuses what the current leaders are doing to the country in terms of human rights violations, disrespecting human rights violations, the accumulation of power, and the awful use of that power against civilian forces. Okay, that's all I have for you. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Bill. Does anyone have any questions for Bill?
You have photos in your book?
Yes, I do. There are 81 pictures in the book. Many of them published in Newsweek magazine and by United Press International. Many of them never seen before, however. So it's and it's one of the reasons that that the book is it's not cheap. That's what these are. Me and a couple of my friends during the conflict. And there's a, if you go to the website, waitformebook.com, you'll see a lot of visuals that are not in the book. And I have a soundtrack, and this is where the part of the title comes from, True Stories of War, Love, and Rock and Roll. Music has always been an important part of my life. I can't play music. The only thing that I'm semi-adept at playing is the radio. But I love to listen to music, and I have a soundtrack on that website, waitformebook.com, that it contains links to music that I was listening to, Bob Seger, Bob Dylan, the Rolling Stones, contemporary stuff and stuff previous to those times in the 80s, but that helped me, spiritually, psychologically, which music has always done to me, help clarify my feelings, deepen my feelings about about my life, about things that I'm experiencing. And I think it's a fascinating component for anybody who's reading this book and listening to that music at the same time.
You made a comment about the cost of war, the human cost of war. What's been the cost of covering those wars on you? That's a question that I always get asked, and it's a very important question. And my answer has always been that it's a serious cost. Today, as a matter of fact, on Instagram and on one of my Facebook pages, I posted a picture of the youngest brother of my former wife, my Nicaraguan wife. I was married to this Nicaraguan woman. We spent years together. Her youngest brother was badly wounded during the conflict. He was a member of the Sandinista People's Army. He took a mortar round to the head. Today he's blind, suffers from convulsions, doesn't have any short-term or long-term memory, is almost completely incommunicative. And he's a very, very diminished human being. I would be a very, very diminished human being if I let these traumas have too deep of an impact on me. And I've always argued that to be effective, I can't let that happen. I can't become a casualty of the conflicts that I've covered, and I've covered a lot of them. And I've been in really, really bad situations. I've been abducted by Maoist guerrillas in Peru. I've been shot at. I've been the whole 9 yards. But it's just the part of the tapestry that is my life. And there are two ways I can go with this. I can be undermined by them, by these experiences, or I can be somewhat empowered by them. There's nothing in between. You're either a casualty or not. And I choose to be or not. I have to be or not, because if I choose to be a casualty, I can't do my work anymore. I'm useless as a journalist. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think what you're saying is that it has empowered you to seize as much as you can out of your experiences and
out of life. And out of life. I mean, I know one of the reasons that I wrote this book is that I just turned 70 in February. I know that I have far fewer days ahead of me than I do behind me. And I'm not going to let what's behind me hinder me in living these future days to the utmost. And if I don't have this kind of an attitude, it will hinder my ability to enjoy what's left of my life. I can't let that happen.
Okay. Anybody else have anything?
Hey, yeah, hi, Bill, this is Keith. How you doing?
Hey, Keith, how you doing, buddy?
All right. I was just curious if that idea that you're talking about there about being able to, there's sounds like there's some kind of separation there to be able to do the book. Did you look at the process of writing the book as sort of, this was then and this is now, and that was me back then and this is me now, and you had to sort of compartmentalize what happened then as a different lifetime almost?
A good question, Keith. Yeah, yes and no. I mean, it was a different lifetime. I live a different lifestyle now, but in writing this book, and especially going through the materials that I had to go through to like pull all this stuff out of it, it was a process of it had kind of two sides to it, like a double-edged sword. That was my life back then, but all of that has made my life now richer, I think, and more meaningful. So it was a process of discovery, of reuniting with that past, and of coming out of the whole experience more whole. And I think I am more whole as a result of the experience. I mean, it's taken me, I started to write this thing, a decade ago, 2 decades ago, but in pieces, in my journal. And I've gone back to those journals and pulled pieces from it. And now I see how, much more clearly, I see how those pieces that I wrote 10, 15 years ago in my journal, they are part of my life. So it's been both. It's been understanding that part of my life is different, but understanding that they come together and make me what I am today.
All right. Felicidades.
Gracias, hermano. It was Keith who told me about the BookTalk, by the way, Michael.
Oh, good.
I had no idea what BookTalk was, and so I had to look you up. It was Keith. You can thank him for spoiling today's show with me.
I had a feeling there was some connection there.
Any other questions?
I have a question about the book development. Did you, in spite of not agreeing with the advice about including your personal background, which I value having that part because that also is a part of who you are today, you know, all the
Right.
chapters. But did you find it valuable to have a developmental editor for other reasons? Would you recommend something like that?
Yes, I would. I would recommend getting a developmental editor, not the one that I had, because he missed the entire reason for my wanting to write the book. I had three of my colleagues and my first wife and my second wife read the manuscript before I put this thing down. One of them was Juan Tamayo, who a longtime correspondent for the Miami Herald. One was Bruno Lopez, longtime correspondent for UPI and Univision. Another one was Joe Contreras, a great friend, great colleague who probably saved my life when we were abducted rather, by the Shining Path in Peru. They all read the thing. My first wife, Claudia, read it. My second wife, Esther, read it. And I gained a tremendous amount from their feedback because they're all smart, loving people. I had the misfortune of drawing a developmental editor that didn't really do an appropriate job. But that's you win some, you lose some, and that's part of my story as well. But yes, but get a good developmental editor. And I went through an agency called Reedsy, Reedsy, and they ferret out these editors, agents, and anybody associated with publications of books. And you may want to check them out.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And any of you, if you want to talk with me about the book further, I'm happy to Zoom with you. I'm happy to answer your questions. I'm here, and I'm going to spend the rest of this year probably, promoting this book, trying to get it out there because I think it's important. I think there's an important message to tell here, especially for Americans who vote for people who send their money and their kids off to fight in wars overseas.
Okay. And on that note, Wait For Me is available pretty much everywhere. So if you want to grab one, you shouldn't have no problem finding a copy. We'll switch over to Dale.
Never mind.
Dale, who many of you know, and who just came off a very successful Kickstarter program to get What Lies Within off the ground. So Dale, we'll let you take it.
Well, thanks so much. And Michael, I appreciate being here. And Bill, I enjoyed your talk, and the work that you're doing is important, how you're training these young people to go in places and kind of help them be ready. But
thank you.
This is a totally different subject that I'm getting onto. My story kind of started with a conversation with a friend of mine who said, you might want to photograph Andrea Noel's collections. And I didn't even know at that point that she collected. So, I went to her and I said, would I be able to photograph some of your collections? And the next time that I saw her, let me share my screen here. She presented me with, let me get to it. All right, there's the book cover. And then the next time I saw her, she, it's taking a minute. She presented me with this letter that was front and back covered with the categories of what she collected. And I noticed when I first looked at it that these were not like prize expensive items. These were found items that she collected, and she would put them out for display and ask people to come over and see them. And I arranged to go to her house. And when I pulled in front of her house, I'm looking at it. It's just like a storybook house with wisteria growing all along the front. And I thought, my first thought was, What Lies Within, which is, of course, the book title, because I had no idea, what I was getting myself into. But I was so thankful for it. the first day I didn't really go to photograph. I just went to, like, you know, scope the rooms out and see what the lay of the land was. And she took me up to her attic, which is where she stores most of her collections, and everything is itemized. And the first box she pulled out was this box of nude Ken dolls. And it's the only image that I did in black and white. But after I saw the other collections, I just knew that this series had to be in color because of how colorful it is. This is the quote from Andrea that's actually in the book. Collectors are born, not made. They can't help it. Bottle caps and matchbooks came first. Later, rocks and bottles and postcards, always and forever postcards. Since teaming up with Dale Niles and her camera, I have realized that I collect many very ordinary things. You will see Dale's take on a lot of them in this book. And on the note of postcards, if anybody wants to write her, she will always write you back. And she likes to do handmade postcards made out of boxes that she's cut up. The image on the left of Jesus with the do not touch, when I first went to photograph, she had things laid out. And, you know, I would, you know, just as I'm passing by, I would, you know, move one over something, and unconsciously she would go back and put back exactly where it was. She just is that specific. Little OCD. But I need to move this. In the book are, it's separated into 6 different categories. And this is one of the categories, accumulations, which is the gradual gathering of acquiring things. And then that's a flap on the right side is a flap, and it opens up, and there's a quote. We've used quotes from Walter Benjamin, and he was a German Jewish philosopher, and he was a literary critic and an essayist who spent the last decade of his life fleeing from Nazis. But he wrote a book called Illuminations, and there are several quotes about collecting in there, and he was a collector of books. And one of the things that he says is, we collect books in the belief that we are preserving them, when in fact it is the book that is preserving the collector. And a lot of what he said really hit the nail on the head with Andrea and her reason for collecting. When I first started this project, I just thought, well, I'll be, you know, photographing some interesting things. And I had no idea how deep the collector's world is. And it's just an interesting place to dwell in, because people collect for different reasons. I mean, you know, it's a strong instinct, I think, in most of us. It allows us to relive or preserve our childhood. It's, we can revisit a memory just by something that we've kept. And as some of you know, some of my other series involve like family heritage and the things that I've kept, and, you know, what you do with them. And it keeps the past living in the present. And, you know, it's different. One of the things Andrea said, that her collecting is a way for her to connect with people, because all of these objects have had a previous life, and, you know, they kind of come with that. But the quote from Walter Benjamin is, one has only to watch a collector handle the object in his glass case. As he holds them in his hands, he seems to be seeing through them into their distant past, as though inspired. And that is almost exactly how she feels about things. But I said how organized she was, and this is her collection of buttons. But the first time I had seen it, it had this note in it. And I said to her, I want the note in the picture. She knew exactly where to go and find it. So, you know, it's not a big deal, but it just says second box of pearl buttons, same box as metal rulers, in their stack. So she knows exactly where everything is. But these are her little cream pitchers. She has quite the collection of those, and I liked how colorful they were. wetters. These are her shoe shine kits, and this is one of her favorite collections because she likes that. She mostly likes to collect the handmade ones, and she's shown me like the inside of some of these, and they were made out of like old wooden signs that were put together. And I mean, you know, this one in the middle says, you know, 10 cents. I mean, it's been a long time ago since you paid 10 cents for a shoe shine, or if you can even get one anymore. But and then she has several cats, and they're always photobombing. So I put this is Stubby. I put Stubby in the picture, but she collects locks. She has far more than just these three. Razors and the things that go with razors. And then she saves the notes. Like she got this box of coins from Dina at the post office. And she said, this bag of coins is from Jennifer at the post office. So she keeps where she got it. She keeps records of everything. She keeps, she collects rubber duckies. She said she's not really sure why she collects these, but she's got quite a few of them. Stir sticks that have been collected from, you know, Salvation Army, or just found, or, you know, Goodwill, anywhere like that. And some of them you can see are from, you know, like restaurants, you know, they were probably like souvenirs. And then she has Barbies, thousands of Barbies, and Barbies are always set up at her house. She's got them set up in like little scenarios, and she'll tell you the story of why they're set up like that. And actually, I'm gonna stop this here for just a second and go to a video that she, well, it wasn't as easy to get to that. Oh, it's taken, oh, there it is. This is how usually she has Barbie set up at her house.
These are the dolls that came partially closed.
And it gives you kind of an insight to her
and
as well.
With a whole bunch of clothes. And so that's what I did. I took the clothes that were with them and the clothes they had on, and I put them all together. You have to come closer, you'll see. She is Skipper. This is Skipper. And the little dress said Skipper, so she got the dress. I found the shoes and the hat. Put that together. This dress didn't come on this one, but I found it in the bunch of clothes, and she had the necklace on. So she got the dress and all the accessories. He came in his coat and his pajama bottoms, and I found that. And I think he's really nice and tacky. They're going out together. He came in that mostly. They came with their bathing suits. No, maybe I put that one on her. But I really like this one. Note the shoes, note the purse, hat. She is ready. Ready. I like her too. Barbie goes to the beach in high heel shoes. They pretty much came that way. She needed shoes, but otherwise.
Okay, I'll stop that there and get on with the rest of the book. But she's just really specific about how she cares for, you know, these dolls, and how she, you know, dresses them up and everything. And I just, and she, like I say, she always puts them on view for people to come see. She's got Ken dolls playing poker. These girls are having lunch. She's just sitting on the edge. It's all sorts of stories. And they're set up, like I say, all over the house. This one's in the, and she has some old family photos hanging up, and I thought it was a nice kind of comparison of Barbie and the guys. this was probably one of our most fun shoots because I talked her into taking them outside. And these are cross-dressed Ken dolls, except there is one Barbie doll in there. You can hunt for her. And we just had a fun time getting it together. You know, I had her go pull some seats, and so we could act like this group has gotten together, and I call this one the reunion. She has collections of fans, zipper pulls, whistles, bed pans, metal bed pans, porcelain bed pans, glass urinals, and never plastic. She will not collect plastic. And then here's another section called implements and oddments: tools, utensils, or other pieces of equipment, especially as used for a particular purpose. An unused or unwanted item, typically of small size or value. And then here's Walter's quote: "To renew the old world. This is the collector's deepest desire when he is driven to acquire new things." And she is always on the hunt. She's got people that do estate sales that call her if they know there's something specific she likes. These are graders, of course, and she had them laid out on a green tablecloth the first day I was there. This is one of the first things that I photographed. Her kitchen utensil category is probably one of the widest of implements. These are one thing. Some of these are soap savers, which I had never seen those, and I didn't know what they were. And she actually uses one in her kitchen. These items here, which you put pieces of soap inside of it, and you can swish them in the water, and it makes soapy water, and you save every last piece. She's very well read. You know, there she has a book. She doesn't read fiction. She reads everything nonfiction. And then she has the corn cob collection. And here again, you can see the cat getting into the picture. And these are the sterling silver corn cob holders. And she's got an article about them that she found somewhere along the way. Rulers and other measuring implements. She collects boxes and combs. They go from really nice, you know, carved combs, and then they go to plastic combs. And a lot of these she got from secondhand, of course, but she said they came from McDonald's kids' meals, a lot of them. She said they don't do that anymore. And then she has the broken eyeglasses, and she found most of these in the street. I was actually walking with her one day down the street, and she leaned down and she picked one of them up. It's amazing if you're just looking. Champagne corks. These are her precious metal collection. And these are the smaller pieces of wire from the precious metal. And I particularly like this one. I don't know, because I like to do puzzles. So, you know, when I put this together, it was just like, how do the pieces fit? And I think it makes an interesting collage. And then she saved tags off of everything. And she has them, this is like a subcategory of the precious metal. And this is her heavy metal collection. We had to go upstairs in the attic and photograph this because the boxes were too heavy to bring downstairs. This is one of my favorite, the bent and twisted forks. These forks actually came from a house that burned. and you can see that the forks are charred. But she likes them particularly if they're, you know, bent or twisted. This is her pressed aluminum again. And she was a really good sport to let me put her on the floor in January and cover her up with these and lay there till I got finished. All right, then we're up to her doll houses, another one of her favorites. And these are dioramas and scenes, scenic representations in which figures and lifelike details are displayed, usually in miniature, stage settings, subdivision of play. And then Walter Benjamin again. There is in the life of a collector, a dialectic tension between the poles of order and disorder. His existence is tied to relationship to objects, which does not emphasize their functional utilitarian value, that is their usefulness, but studies and loves them as the scene, the stage of their fate. The most profound enchantment for the collector is the locking of individual items within a magic circle in which they are fixed as a final thrill. And one of the things that she does love to do is put these out on display. They're never, you know, she just picks one at a time and pulls them out. But that is a thrill for her. She just loves to display them. And sometimes she'll pull something out because she says she can't remember exactly which ones she had and she just wanted to look at them. So she'll pull them out for display. These are the small, the accessory items that she puts in the dollhouse. And there are boxes and boxes of them. Each house is set up by scale, and each house usually has like a theme. This is the selfie house, she was calling this one. And one time she set up a 50s neighborhood, and that was a really good one. But just look at all the details she puts in here. I mean, yeah, I know children play with doll houses, but she just sets them up. You know, they're the right scale and what she puts in there. Another favorite of mine is Grey Gardens. This is the back of Grey Gardens, if you ever saw the movie, and how overgrown it was. And this is Andrea in the background. When I first started photographing, she would sit there and talk to me usually. And this is Big Edie from Grey Gardens, and you see the cats and the newspapers that were everywhere. Their living room set up similar. And here's little Edie doing her 4th of July dance, and she's got the pin in her scarf. This is another dollhouse, and this was the music room in one of the dollhouses. And I love that there's you know, superheroes playing music. This is the center, not the center of the book, but a section of the book that's like an 8-page fold out. It folds out really large. When I went to proof the color sheets, I was amazed at how big it was. So I really can't wait to get this in hand. She has a collection of dolls, and she set up, this scenario was the Cuddle Baby Nursery. No, the Cuddle Baby Orphanage. They were orphans, all the dolls that were there. And this is Lucy sitting in the lobby. But she always has to be apart. But at the school, they have, I mean, at the Cuddle Baby Orphanage, they have a school. They have people that go out and get their groceries, and they sit down and eat breakfast. And then they also have places for them all to sleep, lined up in a row in a dormitory room. These are her pig-shaped cutting boards, led by Superman. And Andrea's back there herding. These are her tomato pin cushions, as well as the bent and twisted forks. And you can see some of the other items, the knife and some of the spoons. more pin cushions. These, the items in this case, these smaller cases are like the Lane Hope chest, the bigger ones, and they would give you the smaller one when you bought the bigger one. And inside of these cases are other things that she's collecting, like coins that are small and the combs that are small. And on top of the top shelf is a map of what's in every box. So she can, you know, figure out where everything is. And another item she collects are the old silver chest, but she likes to collect the ones that aren't fancy or pristine. She said she likes the ones that are unique color and they're just different. And then here are pictures of me in action that Andrea took of me with, she likes to shoot with a digital camera. I mean, with a disposable camera. So I was on a ladder a lot at her house. And this is the back of the book, the lock. And at the front of the book was also the one picture, but there's a key in the side because you're unlocking a treasure here in this book. And that's it for my presentation. If you guys have questions.
First of all, her handwriting is spectacular.
Isn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
And
she's a kick. I mean, she's got a sense of humor.
yeah.
And I mean, seriously, if anybody is led to want to write her, she'll write you back and it'll be hysterical because she started ripping magazine pages out and giving them little bubble things that they're saying. It's funny. It's really funny.
So it seems like the photos that we saw are a combination of how she has presented scenes and how you have created scenes.
Right.
Okay.
Right. When we first started, she basically set everything up and she still sets up the dollhouses and those still are a no-touch zone. But everything else, someday she'll even let me just do, she says, just do what you want to do.
And then finally, it strikes me that she has an amazing imagination, that her characters have stories. They're living a moment in their life as she sees it.
Yeah, she's very artistic, and which she didn't really think that until I said that to her. But I said, just the way you collect these and the way you display them, that there's an art to that. I actually met her at Slow Exposures, and she was the person that hung the show. She curated it. You know, it was selected by judges, but she's the one that, you know, hung it up, and that she always got compliments from the judges. But so well, I think she's very artistic.
She may read only nonfiction, but she's living fiction through her characters.
Yes, she is. Well, she doesn't watch TV or have a computer, so she just, yeah, she just, which is kind of nice. Yes. It started out, this project I was documenting, you know, I thought I was just documenting her stuff, but then it became more fun and the images became more pieces of art than just documentation. Thanks for your question.
Dale, I'm curious about what you learned about yourself from being involved in this project and how you see objects now or collections or looking around at your own stuff.
Right. It has affected me because, you know, I feel like I hold on to things. I'm very nostalgic and very sentimental. So it's hard for me to release things. But when I said to her, I made some comment how I collected something, and she goes, "You're not a collector, you're an accumulator." So I was like, okay, whatever, but I got a bunch of stuff. But yeah, I like her. And I tell you, this project took 7 years before it got to book time, and she's still pulling the stuff out, and I still go down and see her, and we have a good time together. And I'm fortunate that we had this time to get to know each other really well, and we're best friends. It's great.
Dale, I think you did a wonderful job of giving us, enough of the subject with her things. That I find her really intriguing.
Yes.
And I think the way you pictured her just enhanced that whole notion that she lives in a kind of a different world, and makes me curious about learning more about her and how she's.
Yes, that is it. She is very interesting, and she's interesting to talk to. She's very knowledgeable about things. She's very well read, and because that's what she does for entertainment, is she reads.
How does she sustain herself financially? I'm not to pry into her personal business, but I mean, she lives in a nice house. Does she work?
Right. No, she's retired. Well, she never really did work. I mean, she had like part-time things. She was married, and then she had a partner that he passed, and I think that he passed and left her with enough money to live.
Okay. And where does she live?
She lives in Georgia, in a small town in Georgia.
I see. Okay. And she's from the South.
She's from Atlanta, but she has lived in Paris. And as a matter of fact, one of those glass urinals was from a Paris cemetery, she said. I don't know how she got it home, but so in New York, she lived in New York for quite a while, and her mother got ill. So that brought her back to Atlanta.
Okay.
And, yeah.
Congratulations on the book. It's nice.
Yes, thank you. It should be here November.
Great.
Fingers crossed.
How can people get the book, Dale?
I am taking pre-orders. If anybody would like to pre-order, the book is $85, and I can be paid through Venmo, and I accept checks.
Okay.
And you get my email from Michael, or Michael's got it. He's got my number.
Yes, I do, Dale.
Yes, you do.
Okay, well, guess that's going to wrap it up today. Next month, which is going to be August 21st, is going to be an all Renee Jacobs Day. She has Polaroids just out, and they just reissued a new edition of Paris. So we're going to be doing all Renee next month.
That'll be a great presentation.
Yes, it will.
She's just marvelous.
She was supposed to be today, but had some travel conflicts, and so we pushed her out to next month. So hopefully we'll see y'all next month. Have a good weekend.
Well, thanks everybody for coming. I appreciate you being here. And thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Dale.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Bill.